At my mother's birthday banquet, my sister smirked, "Stay near the salad, you didn't pay for the steak." My dad added, "Let the loved children eat first." I just nodded, took my coat, and left. What they didn't know was the banquet hall, seafood platters, and dessert cart were all on my card. 1 hour later, the restaurant manager returned to the table with the bill folder, and my mother's smile disappeared. The seafood platter arrived at the center of the table still steaming. Lobster tails fanned across a bed of crushed ice, a shrimp cocktail tower catching the light from the chandelier above the private dining room. 14 place settings along a table draped in white linen, napkins folded into fans, candles on every surface, harbor stone grill, the restaurant on the harbor with the bay windows and the wine list that makes people lower their voices when they order. My mother's 60th birthday, the kind of evening that costs what some people pay in rent. My sister leaned across the centerpiece, sans serre in hand, and looked at me the way she has looked at me since we were children. The way you look at furniture that came with the house. "Stay near the salad, Margot. The steak is for people who actually built something." She said it loud enough for the table. Colton's parents, seated 3 chairs to her left, heard it. My mother's book club friend Linda heard it. The couple from Celeste's neighborhood, the Perrys, heard it. 14 people in a room with candles and lobster and the faint sound of piano from the main dining hall, and not one of them said a word. My father picked up the carving knife and sliced into the prime rib like he had ordered it himself. He did not look up when he added his part. "Let the loved children eat first, Margot." Celeste put this whole evening together. Loved children. Said in front of a full table. Said the way you say pass the bread or close the window. Ordinary, casual, the kind of cruelty that only works when everyone in the room has quietly agreed that you are the person who does not count. My mother sat at the center of the table cutting her steak, telling Linda about a garden tour she wanted to take in April. She did not look at me. She did not correct my father. She did not pause. 60 years of silence was the loudest voice in that room. Celeste was not finished. When I reached for the seafood platter to serve myself, she leaned forward and delivered the line that stopped the table for a full 2 seconds. "Put that down. You scan spreadsheets at a hospital and come home to a 1-bedroom with a cat. Nobody here is pretending you're paying for any of this." Mrs. Ashby, seated near the window, set her fork down very quietly and looked at her plate. Colton's mother folded her napkin in half and placed it beside her glass. Linda picked up her water and held it without drinking. 3 women in a room full of people who heard what was said and chose stillness over correction. $3,800. That was the total on my visa for this evening. The private dining room, booked under my name 2 months ago. The seafood upgrade, selected after a tasting with the catering manager, a man named Brennan, who had walked me through 3 menu options over the phone. The dessert cart parked by the service door. Stocked with the tiramisu and the chocolate fondant I had approved in a private tasting 2 weeks before. The prime rib my father was carving. The wine list my sister was drinking through. The only thing I had not paid for was the flowers. $180 in lavender arrangements at each end of the table. That was my sister's entire contribution to our mother's 60th birthday. I set the serving fork down, pushed my chair back, took my coat from the hook behind me, folded my napkin and placed it on the seat. "Happy birthday, Mom." Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked where I was going. Nobody set down a glass or turned a head. That silence told me everything the words had already confirmed. The parking lot was cold. March in Connecticut, the kind of cold that finds the gap between your coat buttons and stays there. I sat in my car for 4 minutes with the engine running and my hands resting on the steering wheel. Then I called the restaurant. Brennan picked up on the second ring. Kitchen noise behind him, plates and voices and the clatter of a busy Saturday night. "This is Margot Calloway." The Calloway party in the private dining room. Yes, Miss Calloway, is everything all right? I am canceling the authorization on my card. Please remove it from the bill and present the charges directly to the party. A short pause. The full amount, ma'am? The seafood upgrade, the dessert cart, the room fee, everything understood. I will bring the bill to the table. I hung up and watched the bay windows from the parking lot. Somewhere inside that room, Brennan was walking toward the table with a bill folder. The steak that Celeste said I had not paid for was about to need someone else's credit card, and the room full of people who watched my father call me unloved was about to witness something else entirely. If stories like this keep you coming back, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. My phone rang 43 minutes later. My mother. I let it ring. Her voicemail arrived at 9:47 p.m. The voice she uses when something has gone wrong in front of people she needs to impress. Tight at the edges. Fast, controlled panic wrapped in anger. Margot, the restaurant, says the card was declined. The manager brought the bill to the table in front of everyone. Your sister's card did not go through. Your father's card did not go through. Colton put $1,500 on his personal card, and they are still short. Mrs. Ashby left before dessert. The Perrys left right after. Call me back. Right now. I did not call her back. That night I lay in bed replaying my sister's voice. You scan spreadsheets at a hospital and come home to a one-bedroom with a cat. Nobody here is pretending you are paying for any of this. She was right about the spreadsheets. Revenue Integrity Analyst at Lakeview Medical Center. My job is to scan billing records for anomalies, flag discrepancies, and build audit trails that prove when money is gone where it should not go. I find fraud for a living. Not the kind on television with offshore accounts and trench coats. The quiet kind. The kind that hides inside institutions and families and relies on nobody checking. She was wrong about everything else. My one bedroom was not an accident. It was a choice. After 6 years of sending money to people who never asked how I earned it, I kept my life small on purpose. A clean desk, a reliable car, a cat named Pepper who did not need me to explain why I came home tired. The apartment was quiet and it was mine, and the only name on the lease was the name I had earned the right to sign. Nobody at that table knew what my credit score was. Nobody knew how many hours I spent each week tracing billing patterns at Lakeview. Building cases that protected patients from the same kind of financial exploitation my own family was running on me. They saw the quiet daughter at the end of the table. They did not see the analyst who caught a $300,000 Medicare overbilling scheme her second year on the job. The next morning, I drove back to Harborstone to pick up the jacket I had left on the coat rack by the entrance. Brennan was at the front desk. He handed me the jacket folded neatly inside a garment bag. The remaining balance from last night, he said. The party was unable to cover the full amount, $1,200 still outstanding. Send me an invoice for one setting, my meal only. The rest is the party's responsibility. He nodded. He did not ask further questions. But he held the door open a beat longer than the job required, and that small gesture carried more respect than anything I had heard at that table. On my way out, I passed the small bin near the entrance to the private dining hallway. A piece of cream cardstock was crumpled inside it. Gold ink caught the overhead light. I stopped, reached in, pulled it out. My handwriting. 3 evenings of practice after work, sitting at my kitchen table with a calligraphy tutorial playing on my laptop, measuring the border with a ruler, dipping the pen into the gold ink I had ordered online because it matched the floral pattern on my mother's favorite tablecloth. Along the bottom, in the lettering that had taken me 40 minutes to get right, with love, hosted by Margot. Celeste had replaced it before the first guest arrived. A printed card sat on the welcome table in its place, hosted by Celeste and Colton Whitmore. I had noticed the swap when I walked in and said nothing. That was the kind of thing I had trained myself to absorb without breaking stride. Someone had crumpled the original and thrown it in the trash before anyone could read who had actually hosted the evening. I stood in the hallway holding the card, and the weight of it was not the cardstock. It was the 3 evenings. The gold ink I had tested on scrap paper first because I did not want to waste the good sheets. The tutorial I replayed 4 times to get the capital C in Callaway right. The moment I had finished the last letter and held it up under my desk lamp and thought, she is going to love this. She never saw it. Celeste made sure of that. I smoothed the invitation flat against the sleeve of my coat and slipped it into the garment bag. Back at my apartment, I set the crumpled invitation on my desk next to my laptop and sat with what I knew. 7 years. That was how long I had been this family's invisible bank account. When my mother needed her hip replaced 5 years ago, insurance covered 80%. The remaining $14,000 came from my savings. I made the transfer in 2 payments so the hospital billing system would not flag it. My father told the family at dinner, thank God the insurance was generous. No mention of the daughter who filled the gap. When his truck needed a transmission 3 years ago, he called me, not Celeste. $80,200. He sent me a photo of the odometer after. No thank you at Thanksgiving. No mention of it at Christmas. Just a photo of a number on a dashboard as if the truck had fixed itself. When Celeste needed a bridge loan for her mortgage 2 years ago. She called on a Wednesday afternoon. $6,000. Just until Colton's next contract pays out. The contract came in 6 weeks later. The money never came back. I never asked. She never offered. The one time I mentioned any of it, at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, my father leaned across the table and said, "Family does not keep a tab, Margot. That is not what we raised you to be. Family does not keep a tab, unless you are the one writing every check." There were smaller things too, covering Celeste's children's dentist appointments when her insurance lapsed, sending a check when the water heater burst at my parents' house on a Sunday night because the plumber wanted payment before he would touch a pipe. Each one too small to fight about, each one too large to forget. And after every payment, the same silence. No thank you. No mention at the next gathering, just an assumption that Margot would keep the lights on, because Margot always did. I almost called him from the parking lot that night and screamed every dollar amount into the phone until my voice gave out. But the crumpled invitation was sitting on my desk, my own handwriting bent at the fold. Gold ink cracked along the creases. Something about seeing my name in my own lettering made me stop. The screaming would not fix the ink. The screaming would not make them read the bottom line. So I sat still. Monday morning at Lakeview, Suki Delaney leaned around the partition between our cubicles, coffee in her hand, and studied my face. "You look like you slept in a parking lot." "Family dinner," I said. She set the coffee on my desk without being asked. 6 months ago, when I missed a deadline because I was on the phone with my mother's insurance company arguing a reimbursement denial, Suki finished my audit report and submitted it under my login before the end of shift. She left a sticky note on my keyboard, billed it to training hours. "Buy me a coffee." Nobody else in my life had ever covered for me without turning the favor into a debt. "The bad kind of family dinner?" she asked. "The kind where you find out what you are worth to people." She looked at me for a beat. "When you are ready to talk about it, I am 1 cubicle over." She went back to her desk. No follow-up, no pressure. That was Suki. That same afternoon, after my second audit review of the day, I opened the free annual credit report website on my work computer. My credit score had dropped 41 points since October. I had noticed the dip in the fall and blamed it on a hard inquiry from my auto insurance renewal. That was easier than looking closer. Now I looked. 4 accounts I had never opened. The first was a department store card, opened 18 months ago. Credit limit of $9,000, balance of $6,400. The application listed my name, my social security number, and an address I had never used, a P.O. box in Guilford. The second was a visa through Northern Harbor Bank, opened 14 months ago, balance of $8,200. The authorized user listed on the account was Celeste M. Whitmore. My stomach did not drop. My hands did not shake. The feeling was not surprise. It was recognition. The same feeling I get at work when a billing pattern shifts from noise to signal, when numbers stop being random and start telling a story that someone buried on purpose. The third was another credit card opened 10 months ago, balance of $4,600. The fourth was a personal loan of $22,000 disbursed 8 months ago, with monthly payments that stopped after 2. The remaining balance was in default. Total across all 4 accounts, $47,000. $47,000 in my name. Debt I had never signed for, never authorized, never seen. I opened a new spreadsheet and labeled the columns the same way I label a hospital fraud audit file. Account, institution, date opened. Current balance. Authorized users. Application address. Application IP if available. I entered each line carefully. I filled each cell the way I was trained to fill them. Evidence is patient. Emotion is not. I almost drove to Celeste's house at 2 a.m. and dropped every printout on her front step. But Suki's voice was in my head from that morning, the same principle she uses when I get emotional over a flagged audit: build the case first, then deliver the case. She did not know what my case was yet, but the principle held like an anchor. Tuesday, I called each of the 4 creditors from my car during my lunch break. The first 2 were straightforward: account verification, dispute filing, application request. The third call, the regional bank, went differently. Ma'am, I can confirm that an authorized user was added to this account at the time of opening. A Celeste M. Whitmore. Would you like to remove her? I did not add her. I did not open this account. I have never banked with your institution. A long pause on the line. The sound of typing. I see. In that case, I am transferring you to our fraud department. Please hold. 3 of the 4 creditors sent digital copies of the account applications within 24 hours. The fourth, the personal loan, required a written dispute and a notarized identity theft declaration, which I filed that evening at a Up store on my way home. Wednesday morning, the applications arrived in my inbox. I printed each one and spread them across my kitchen table under the overhead light, the way I lay out a flagged billing file before I start the line-by-line review. 4 sheets, 4 signatures. My name in handwriting that was not mine. The forgeries were practiced, close enough to pass a bank officer's glance at a screen. But the loops on the M in Margot were too wide, and the tail on the Y in Callaway was too short. After 4 years of reading billing signatures at Lakeview, I could see the difference the way a piano tuner hears a note slightly flat, not wrong enough to catch casually, wrong enough to prove. The personal loan application listed my adjusted gross income down to the exact dollar, not a round estimate. The number from my most recent tax filing. Exact. One place in the world held my tax returns in physical form. My father's home office. Bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, behind the hanging folders, labeled by year. He had prepared the family taxes until 3 years ago when I switched to my own accountant, but the old copies were still in that drawer. I had seen them the last time I helped him reorganize the office, 6 months before the first fraudulent account was opened. He opened the drawer, pulled the folder with my name on it, handed it to his older daughter so she could become me on paper. He did not overlook me. He inventoried me. He knew exactly what I was worth, and he decided I was worth more as a line of credit than as a daughter. I almost let the whole thing collapse when my mother texted me a single heart emoji the following Sunday. 1 red heart. No words, no apology, no mention of the banquet, the bill, the scene her silence had allowed. just a heart, and for a moment, sitting at my kitchen table with the evening light coming through the window, it almost reached me. Then I looked at my laptop screen. The credit report's still open. 4 accounts I never touched, $47,000 I never spent. The heart emoji dissolved like sugar in cold water. I did not reply. The week moved slowly. At work, I reviewed hospital billing files the way I always do, line by line, column by column, looking for the number that does not belong. But now every anomaly I flagged on a patient's account felt different. Someone's name used without permission. Someone's identity turned into a transaction. Someone's trust converted into dollars by a person who was supposed to protect them. I had been auditing this crime in strangers' lives for 4 years without recognizing it in my own. On my desk, beside my keyboard, there was a small framed photo of my family from 6 years ago. My parents, Celeste, me, taken at a restaurant, all of us smiling. I had been the one who suggested dinner that night. I had been the one who paid. I turned the frame face down on Wednesday morning and did not turn it back. Thursday evening, reviewing the application files for the 3rd time, I found something that reframed everything. One of the creditors had included the IP address log from the online application. I cross-referenced it with Celeste's home address using a geolocation tool, the same kind I use at the hospital to verify remote billing submissions. The IP matched. All 4 applications originated from the same network, Celeste's home. But that was not the part that changed the story. In the personal loan file, a supplemental verification document had been included by the bank's compliance team. It contained a text exchange between the applicant and a reference whose phone number matched a number already on the file. The applicant was Celeste. The reference was Colton. The thread was short, sent the week before the banquet. Celeste, make sure your parents sit near us at the dinner. Not near Margot. Colton, why does it matter? Celeste, I told them I am hosting. If she says anything about paying, I will handle it. Your parents are making the investment decision next month. This has to look right. Colton, fine. Just don't start anything. Celeste, she will sit at the end like she always does. It will not be an issue. The banquet was not cruelty. It was a performance. Celeste had told Colton's parents that she was hosting the birthday dinner, that she was paying for the private room, the seafood, the dessert cart. She needed Colton's parents to believe the Callaways had money, because they were evaluating whether to put $85,000 into Colton's contracting business. Part of that evaluation was the family's financial stability. The humiliation was not impulsive. It was staged. Mocking my apartment, my job, my solitude, pushing me to the end of the table, all of it was set design. She needed me to look small, so nobody at that table would wonder why the quiet daughter at the far end was the one whose name had been on the original invitation. She did not just steal my credit. She stole my mother's birthday and turned it into a pitch meeting. If you are still listening, hit that subscribe button for Family Secret Tales and turn on notifications. This story is not finished yet. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after reading that text chain. The crumpled invitation was beside my laptop, and I kept looking at it. With love, hosted by Margot. Every word of that line was true. Every word of Celeste's replacement card was a lie, and the lie had been designed not just to erase me, but to sell my erasure to an audience of investors sitting 3 chairs away, eating lobster I had paid for, watching my father call me unloved. The worst part was not the money. The worst part was the planning, the careful seating arrangement, the rehearsed insults, the timing of each comment to land in front of the right people. My sister had not lost control at that banquet. She had executed a script, and I had been cast as the prop. That Friday afternoon, I sat across the desk from a consumer protection attorney named Adler. Small office, clean desk, 1 diploma on the wall, and a potted fern that needed watering. I placed the folder in front of him. credit reports, application copies with the forged signatures marked, the IP log, the text exchange, the timeline I had built in my spreadsheet, color-coded the same way I color-code hospital fraud audits, red for confirmed, yellow for pending, green for verified. He read for 9 minutes without speaking. Then he closed the folder and looked at me. This is precise work. Who pulled all of this together? I audit hospital billing fraud for a living. He nodded slowly. Most identity theft I see comes from strangers, skimmed cards, data breaches, stolen mail. 1 in 5 comes from family. He paused. Family cases hold up best in court. The evidence trail is shorter and the access is easier to prove. Your father kept your tax returns in an unlocked cabinet. The IP ties every application to your sister's network. There is no alternative explanation. What is the process? 3 tracks at once. Federal identity theft affidavit, state-level police report, civil demand for restitution with a 30-day deadline. We start all 3 today. We filed the FTC identity theft affidavit that afternoon. I completed it online in his office, attached the supporting documents, and received the case number before I stood up. On Monday, I drove to the county police station during my lunch break. The building smelled like floor cleaner and old coffee. The officer who took my statement was a woman about my age with a calm voice and a pen that she clicked between questions. She wrote slowly and read each sentence back to me before moving to the next. And the second individual involved in providing your personal documents? My father, Roy Calloway. She paused, looked at me over the clipboard. You are sure you want to include him by name? He opened a filing cabinet and handed my tax returns to the person who used them to forge loan applications. Yes, include him. She wrote the name down without another pause. When I signed the completed report, she handed me a copy and said, "This takes courage. Most people in your situation do not file." I folded the copy and put it in my bag. Courage was not the word I would have chosen. Precision was closer. That same Monday, Adler mailed formal credit bureau disputes to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. He drafted 2 separate letters. The first was a civil demand to Celeste for restitution of the full $47,000 with a 30-day deadline. The second was a notification letter to my father, identifying him as a co-conspirator in the identity theft and informing him that his role had been documented in the police report. By Wednesday, the bank's fraud department had frozen all 4 accounts. Celeste would receive the notification by mail. I did not need to see her face when she opened it. I had seen enough of her face. I told Suki on Tuesday, sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot during our lunch break. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat still for a long moment. "Do you need me to come with you when you tell them?" "No, but I need you to answer if I call after." "Done." She turned the ignition. "And, Margot?" "Yeah. Build the case, then deliver the case. You already built it. Now deliver it." 2 weeks after the banquet, my father called. His voice had the careful, measured tone he uses when he wants something but needs to sound like he is being reasonable. "We need to sit down as a family. This restaurant situation has gotten out of hand. They are calling the house every other day. Your mother is embarrassed. Come on Sunday and we will sort it out." He thought the meeting was about a $1,200 restaurant bill. He did not know about the $47,000 folder in my desk drawer. That Saturday night, I sat at my desk and prepared the folder. I printed the credit reports on clean paper. I placed the forged application copies in order by date, earliest first, with the signature discrepancies marked in red. I included the IP log, the text chain printout, and the timeline spreadsheet I had color-coded at work. Each document in a clear plastic sleeve. Each sleeve in sequence, the way I prepare an audit file before I walk it into a review meeting at Lakeview. Clean, ordered, impossible to argue with. At the bottom of the folder, I placed the crumpled invitation. It did not need a plastic sleeve. It spoke for itself. I chose a plain blazer and flat shoes. No jewelry. Nothing they could call a performance. I wanted to walk into that room the way I walk into an audit, prepared, quiet, and carrying more information than anyone at the table expected. Sunday, 4 o'clock. The dining room at my parents' house, my father at the head of the table, my mother at the opposite end, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the tablecloth. Celeste across from me, arms crossed, jaw set, chin lifted slightly in the way people hold their face when they have already decided they are right. Colton beside her, leaning back, the posture of a man who was told to attend but not told why. 5 people. 1 table. No candles this time. My father opened. The restaurant is calling every day. Your mother's birthday was supposed to bring this family closer, and instead there is a bill nobody can cover and a scene that Linda Ashby is still talking about at church. Celeste leaned forward. If you hadn't walked out and made a spectacle in front of Colton's parents, I did not make a spectacle, I said. I left. The spectacle happened after, when nobody at the table could pay for the dinner I had booked, funded, and organized. You did not fund. Yes, I did. I opened the folder. But that is not why I am here. I placed the credit reports on the table. 4 pages. Highlighted lines. Flagged accounts. 18 months ago, someone opened a department store credit card in my name. 14 months ago, a Visa through Northern Harbor Bank. 10 months ago, a third card. 8 months ago, a personal loan for $22,000 with my forged signature on the application. Nobody moved. Not the performative stillness of the banquet, where people chose to look away. This was the real kind. The kind where breathing gets louder because nobody knows what comes next. 4 accounts. My name. My social security number. My tax return information pulled from the filing cabinet in your home office, Dad. I looked at him. His hands went flat on the table, fingers spread wide, pressing into the wood as if the surface might shift beneath him. Total debt placed in my name without my knowledge or my consent, $47,000. Colton sat up straight. He looked at Celeste. She did not look back. I kept my voice level. The same voice I use in an audit review when the numbers have already told the story and the only thing left is the delivery. You opened 4 credit accounts using my social security number. That is identity theft. You applied for a personal loan with my forged signature. That is forgery. Dad, you pulled my tax returns from your filing cabinet and handed them to her. That is conspiracy to commit fraud. My mother's hand moved to the edge of the table and gripped it. Her knuckles went pale. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at my father. He did not look back. She looked at Celeste. Celeste was staring at the credit reports as if the highlighted lines might rearrange themselves into something less damning. My attorney filed a police report last Tuesday. The FTC has an open case number. The bank froze every account opened in my name on Wednesday morning. I turned to Colton. He looked like a man watching an accident from the curb, unable to move and unable to look away. Colton, I suggest you speak with your own attorney before the end of the week. Your wife listed your joint address on 3 of those applications. Colton's chair scraped back 2 inches. He did not stand, but the distance that opened between him and Celeste was the kind that does not close. Those accounts were temporary. Celeste's voice broke on the second word. She swallowed. Tried again. I was going to pay them off before you ever noticed. Before I ever noticed. I nodded. That is what fraud depends on. The person being robbed not looking. We can pay it back. Her voice shifted again, bargaining now. The third voice in 4 minutes. We will set up a payment plan. Monthly, whatever you want. Just pull the police report. You cannot unpull a police report, Celeste, then call the bank. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you authorized the accounts. I did not authorize the accounts. Telling the bank I did would be a federal crime. I am not committing a federal crime to clean up yours. Margot, my mother's voice from the end of the table. Small, reaching, she is your sister. She is the person who forged my signature 4 times, Mom. That is a different thing. Silence. My mother pressed her lips together. Her eyes were wet. She did not speak again. I placed both hands flat on the table. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. The woman who scans spreadsheets found 4 accounts you could not hide. The woman in the 1 bedroom has a case number, a police report, and an attorney. The woman you told to stay near the salad? She paid for every plate on that birthday table. She paid for every month of Dad's truck. She paid for Mom's hip surgery. She paid for your mortgage bridge that you never returned. 7 years of checks, Celeste, and the only thing you ever contributed was $180 in flower arrangements. That is your total. $180 in 7 years. Celeste's face changed in sequence. The color drained from her neck upward, starting at the collar of her blouse and climbing to her hairline in a slow wave. Her lower lip pulled between her teeth. Her right hand gripped the table edge until her knuckles matched the white of the tablecloth. She was breathing through her nose, shallow and rapid, the way a body breathes when the mind is running out of room. Colton turned to her. You opened credit cards in her name? In Margot's name? She did not answer. Is this true? His voice was flat, not angry yet. Still in the stage where the brain is filing information into categories it does not want to accept. My father spoke for the first time since I had opened the folder. Margot, this is a family matter. You do not need attorneys and police reports. We can sit here and work this out. You gave her my social security number, Dad. You opened your filing cabinet, pulled my folder, and handed her the documents she needed to steal my identity. There is nothing to work out. There is only what is coming. His mouth closed. His eyes dropped to the table surface, both hands flat, still pressing, fingers still spread. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, not because he had shrunk, but because the room had gotten bigger around him. Celeste tried once more. Her voice had changed again. Not the Sancerre voice from the banquet, not the breaking voice from 2 minutes ago. This one was harder. Cornered, if you go through with this, I will call Lakeview. I will tell them their compliance analyst has been accessing patient billing records for personal use. I will tell them you are the one committing fraud. The room went cold. I looked at her. My sister, who had taken my name, my credit, my tax returns, my invitation, my mother's birthday, and my place at the table, and was now threatening to take my career with a lie that mirrored her own crime. Call them, I said. I audit fraud for a living. They will ask me to audit you. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her eyes moved to Colton, then to my father, then back to me. Nobody offered her a lifeline. Stay near the salad, you said. I looked at her and did not blink. The salad, the steak, the haul, and $47,000 were all mine. Sit down. She was already sitting, but something in her posture collapsed inward. Her shoulders folded forward, her crossed arms dropped to her lap. The chair seemed to get deeper around her. I reached into the folder one last time and placed the crumpled invitation on the table between the credit reports. Cream cardstock. Gold ink faded at the creases. The calligraphy I had practiced alone at my kitchen table 3 evenings after work. With love, hosted by Margot. This is the last dollar, I said. The last phone call. The last time I walk through that door and pretend it costs nothing to be part of this family. If you need to reach me, call my attorney. That is where this family lives now. I closed the folder, stood, put on my coat, walked to the front door. My mother's voice came from the dining room, thin, cracked at the edges. Margot, please, I closed the door behind me. The evening air hit my face and it felt different from the parking lot cold 2 weeks ago. That night I had been shaking. Tonight my hands were still. The folder was under my arm. The invitation was on the table inside. I had walked in with the truth and walked out with nothing left to carry. In my car, I called Suki. "It is done," I said. "How do you feel?" "Like I just closed an audit." "Good. Come over. I have wine and no follow-up questions." I drove to Suki's apartment. She opened the door, handed me a glass, and sat on the couch across from me. "Did they cry?" she asked. "Celeste cried. My father just sat there. My mother said my name once. And you?" I did not cry. I closed the folder and walked out. She raised her glass. "To the woman who scans spreadsheets." I raised mine. "To the woman who finishes other people's audit reports." We drank. She did not ask another question for the rest of the night. 3 things happened in the weeks that followed. The first was financial. The bank's fraud investigation moved faster than expected. Within 10 days, Celeste received a formal letter from the fraud division requiring a written response within 15 business days. If she did not respond, the accounts would be referred to collections with a permanent fraud flag attached to her credit file. The flag triggered automatic notices to all 3 credit bureaus, which meant that any lender, landlord, or investor conducting due diligence on Celeste or Colton would see it immediately. Colton's parents saw it. The $85,000 investment conversation ended in a single phone call. His mother did not raise her voice. She said 4 words: "We are not investing." The line went dead. Colton's contracting business, which had been counting on that capital to lease equipment for a municipal project, stalled within a week. He moved his tools into a rented storage unit because the equipment yard would not extend his lease without a deposit he could no longer produce. The municipal bid he had been preparing for 2 months went to a competitor. The yard kept his deposit as a penalty. My father received Adler's letter on a Tuesday. He called me 3 times that day. I did not answer. His truck payment, which I had been covering for 11 months without acknowledgement, bounced on the 1st of the following month. His auto insurance lapsed 6 days later. He drove the truck to a mechanic and asked about selling it. The offer was $2,200. The second thing was social. 10 days after the confrontation, Celeste and Colton were invited to dinner at his parents' house. Colton had already told his mother the full story. At the table, with 2 longtime family friends seated across from them, Colton's mother looked at Celeste and asked, "Is it true you opened credit accounts in your sister's name?" Celeste did not answer for 3 full seconds, long enough for the silence to fill the room like smoke. Colton's mother placed her napkin beside her plate. "I think the investment discussion is permanently closed, Colton. We will not be revisiting this." Colton cleared his throat. "Mom, I had nothing to do with what Celeste did. Your wife forged credit applications from your home computer, using your joint address. Whether you knew or not, your household is the origin point of a federal fraud complaint." She looked at Celeste. "I have nothing else to say to you tonight." One of the guests reached for her water glass, the other studied his plate. Nobody spoke for Celeste. Colton did not reach for her hand. She excused herself to the bathroom and did not come back for 11 minutes. When she returned, the other couple had already left. At my mother's church, the shift was slower, but just as certain. Irene had been co-chair of the Women's Fellowship brunch for 9 years. The week after the confrontation, her co-chair called to say the spring planning meeting had been moved to a different date. Irene was not told which one. The following Sunday, the seat beside Irene in the 3rd pew was empty for the first time in 4 years. Nobody said anything directly. But that Thursday, when Irene went to the grocery store, the woman behind her in the checkout line, a fellow fellowship member, looked at Irene's items on the belt and then looked away without greeting her. Irene left 2 bags on the counter and walked out. She drove home and did not go back to that store for 2 weeks. Small towns do not need announcements. They have silence, and silence travels faster than any sermon. If this story reached somewhere real, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with someone who needs to hear it. These stories keep coming because of you. The third thing was the quietest, and it was the one that stayed. 3 weeks after the confrontation, my father sat at the kitchen table at 6 a.m. The house was empty in the way houses get when the person who kept them running has stopped. No one was covering the truck payment. No one was answering Irene's insurance questions. No one was transferring money on a Wednesday afternoon so someone else could pretend they had earned it. The crumpled invitation was on the table in front of him, propped against the salt shaker. He had taken it from the dining room where I left it and smoothed it flat with his hands. The gold ink was faded at the crease lines. The calligraphy was slightly smeared where a thumb, maybe his, had rubbed across the words. With love, hosted by Margot. The truck was still in the driveway. He could not afford to insure it and could not afford to sell it for the price he was offered. The filing cabinet in his office was still open. The folder with my name on it was still missing. He had not replaced it. He had not closed the drawer. He read the invitation every morning now. The phone on the counter was face down. It had not rung in 21 days. The house creaked in the way that houses do when nobody is coming to fix anything. Whatever he was thinking as the first light came through the kitchen window and fell across the cream cardstock and the salt shaker and his own still hands, it was too late for it to reach anyone. 6 weeks after the banquet, on a Saturday morning, I sat at my desk by the window in my apartment. The invitation was pinned to the corkboard above my laptop, creases visible. Gold ink catching the early light, not hidden, not crumpled, displayed the way you display something you made with your own hands and refuse to let someone else throw away. My laptop was open to a registration page for an evening calligraphy class at the Community Arts Center. 12 sessions. Thursday nights. The same craft I had taught myself alone in this apartment. Tracing letters from a tutorial, measuring borders with a ruler, choosing gold ink because it matched my mother's tablecloth. Now I would learn it in a room full of people who had chosen to be there. My phone buzzed. Suki, brunch tomorrow? I typed back one word, coming. The coffee steamed on the desk. The apartment was quiet. Not the quiet of being overlooked. Not the quiet of sitting at the end of a table where nobody turns to look. The quiet of choosing who gets to be in the room with you. The quiet of knowing exactly what your voice is worth and spending it only where it matters. I picked up the calligraphy pen and opened the practice workbook to the first blank page. The first letter I wrote was M.